When I watched the first teaser trailer, and it began with this shot of Superman landing in the snow, my interest was definitely piqued. Superman is a character where the first time you see him is always with him broad-shouldered and heroic, ready to save the day. But if the first time we see him is him getting his ass handed to him, that immediately establishes a much different tone to his character. It's a declaration that he isn't a god and he can be beaten. When I sat down in the theater for the first time, and this was the opening scene of the movie, I knew this was going to be good. After leaving the theater, I was buzzing with energy. I loved it so much. I did something nobody my age does. I went to see it 2 more times. I watched the movie 3 days in a row. Superman in this movie is not some gritty edgelord. He is a shining symbol of hope. The characters and conflicts are well written and feel well established, and you get the sense when watching this movie that the world didn't just come out of nowhere. This is a world that has existed for years, and we're just getting a snapshot of it. And it's woke as shit, baby! Yeah! Love me some woke! Yeah, baby! Woke train coming through! Chugga chugga woke woke! Yeah, baby! Whew. Yeah. David Cornsweet's Superman is how Superman should be at his best. Despite the incredible power he wields, he stops at nothing to protect the lives of everyone. Not just humans either. He's the guy that goes out of his way to save the smallest squirrel. He's the guy who gets upset by the Justice Gang killing a big monster that was just trashing the city. While fighting said monster, the members of the Justice Gang fly around bashing it with seemingly no regard for the surrounding civilians, and Superman is the guy doing everything he can to protect those people from the carnage. Superman does not just give one fuck, he gives every fuck. Cornsweet is contrasted by Nicholas Holt's Lex Luthor. Luthor is a bitter, xenophobic, narcissistic billionaire who only cares about killing Superman. Holt makes Luthor feel almost cartoonishly racist at times. When he breaks into Superman's Fortress of Solitude, he has a whole monologue talking about how Superman isn't a man, he's an it. Whenever he uses the word alien when referring to Superman, he says it with the utmost amount of disgust. When he puts Superman in his pocket universe prison, the first thing he does is throw out what I really can only describe as casual racism towards Superman. Surrounding Superman is of course the usual cadre of Daily Planet staff, including Jimmy Olsen, Cat Grant, Steve Lombard, Perry White, and of course the all-important Lois Lane, played by Rachel Brosnahan. This is complemented by the Justice Gang, which includes Hawkgirl, Mr. Terrific, and Guy Gardner. Luthor has of course surrounded himself with the usual array of yes-men and minions that have defined him throughout the years. Along with Ultraman, a lobotomized clone of Superman, the Engineer, a special agent who Lex implanted with nanites, Eve, Lex's supermodel girlfriend, and of course the movie's analog for Netanyahu and Putin. The first half hour or so of the movie does an excellent job showing the differences between Superman and Luthor. Superman is surrounded by friends, family, and loved ones. Luthor is surrounded by employees, killers, and a girlfriend he doesn't seem to pay much attention to. Superman is upfront and honest about who he is, where he comes from, and what he's here to do. Luthor sits in the shadows controlling Ultraman like a puppet and having meetings with the Department of Defense in secret. Luthor tries to even the field by ruining Superman's image. When Clark was sent to Earth, his parents sent a message with him that was damaged in transit. Lex finds the message during his break-in and recovers the full file. It turns out, his parents didn't send him here to help people. They sent him here to rule over Earth and be a dictator. They want him to get his fuck on and sire as many children as possible. Lex uses this message to try and show the world that Superman isn't a good person. He tries to convince them that Superman is secretive, conceited, and evil. In other words, exactly the same as himself. Superman, of course, completely refutes this by the end of the movie. He breaks out of Luthor's prison, saves the day, and has one of the most powerful monologues I've seen in a superhero movie. In the scene, Luthor calls him an alien again, and Superman responds by telling Luthor that's where he's always been wrong. Superman may be from another planet, but he is human to his core. He gets hurt, he gets scared, and still he gets out of bed every morning and tries to make the right choices. The whole time, Superman is lit with the sun shining brightly behind him, while Luthor is in a shadowy corner, further emphasizing the difference between them. He ends the monologue by saying he hopes that one day, Luthor realizes that he has that same capacity for good. And then Krypto breaks Luthor's arm. Good dog. The politics and symbolism between these two characters are painted pretty clearly. The movie in general is very political, but in case you've somehow missed that, let's start with the obvious. So we are all clear. I am using the word woke, ironically. If you don't know what that means, this video is not for you. The politics of this movie are very clear and upfront. Superman is a refugee and an immigrant from another world who came to Earth seeking a new home. Luthor plays the part of the xenophobic white American that refuses to see Superman as anything other than an alien. He refuses to acknowledge the good Superman has done for his community and for the world because he can only see him as an other. For reasons we will get into later, Superman gets shipped off to Luthor's pocket universe to be imprisoned. The courts ruled that because Superman is an extraterrestrial, he doesn't have any rights under American law. The pocket universe is a private prison run exclusively by Luthor, which mostly contains political prisoners from foreign countries. But it also houses all of his ex-girlfriends. What a charming person he is. This prison can be read as a critique on any number of things. The biggest one for me is Superman being stripped of his rights and shoved in a hole to rot. This can be compared to Guantanamo Bay, where during the War on Terror, the US military imprisoned and tortured thousands of Muslims under shaky legal justifications. The prison itself, being run by a private corporation, could be read as a jab at the American prison industry and the private entities which run it. And then, of course, there's the monkeys. Okay, so there's a scene in the Pocket Universe where Lex shows off a bunch of monkeys being mind-controlled to spread hate about Superman online, which is just the funniest goddamn thing in the world. It's a perfect takedown of both internet trolls and generative AI while making a reference to the infinite monkey theorem, which that makes me imagine a scene where Luthor is all like, "Monkey 4419, what the fuck are you doing? You're supposed to be rage-baiting Superman and you've written the entirety of Shakespeare's Hamlet! Go to the timeout corner!" So at this point, the movie has taken swings at immigration policy, racism, and illegal incarcerations. And that's just the start. In the movie, Luthor orchestrates a war between the countries of Boravia and Jarhampur. Superman intervenes in this conflict, stopping the Boravian invasion. There are several political parallels surrounding this conflict, so let's examine them one at a time. First, let's address the elephant in the room. Superman is not about Israel and Palestine. According to Variety, the script for the movie was finished in May 2023, months before the conflict between the two countries escalated. James Gunn himself also told the London Times that it isn't about the Middle East. That does not mean it isn't relevant to the conflict. Boravia is described in the movie as a trusted ally of the United States, similar to Israel being a close ally of the US in the real world. During Superman's interview with Lois, she brings up the fact that Boravia maintains that they are freeing Jarhampur from a tyrannical government. Superman retorts that whether or not Jarhampur is a good government does not give Boravia the right to invade it, which feels like a clear indictment on the idea that Palestine deserves to be invaded because Hamas is evil. Whether or not the movie was intended to be about Israel and Palestine, there are still parallels that can be drawn between the movie and the conflict. Movies and art are not monoliths, and they can take on many different meanings throughout the ages. For example, Frank Darabont's 2007 movie The Mist has been described as being an allegory for 9/11. The white mist that covers the grocery store in the movie has been described as a visual parallel to the clouds of white dust that covered the streets of New York after the towers fell. However, the short story the film was based on was written by Stephen King 20 years before 9/11. So, with that in mind, what real conflicts does the movie draw from? Well, the next obvious choice would be the Ukrainian War. Boravia and Jarhampur are identified as being in Eastern Europe, and Vasil Gurkos, the dictator of Boravia, speaks with an accent that to most Americans sounds like a Russian accent. And, quick sidebar, I want to show some love to the actor who plays Gurkos. Zlatko Buric is a man whose name I have definitely mispronounced, and he eats it the fuck up in every scene he's in. Gurkos is a very animated and funny character, and his interactions with Luthor and the press were very fun to watch. I was almost sad about his hot girl hang gliding incident. With that addressed, let's quickly go through a laundry list of other themes we can identify in this conflict. Luthor is selling Boravia weapons for pennies on the dime so that when Boravia takes over Jarhampur, Luthor gets half the country to himself. Lois identifies the oil deposits in the region as being a source of motivation for Luthor's desire for the land. This could be compared to the Iraq War, where the United States invaded a sovereign country so Dick Cheney and his oil executive friends could line their pockets. Lois also identifies the cultish following that Luthor has online, which believes he will establish a paradise out in the desert. And if you know your billionaires, you know who this is referring to and what planet his paradise will be on. And finally, Luthor reveals at the end of the movie that he doesn't actually care about Jarhampur. He manufactured the whole conflict just so he could have an excuse to kill Superman. He banked on Superman intervening in the conflict, causing the US government to get Luthor to put him in his pocket prison. This could be compared to Trump screaming about a so-called invasion of illegal immigrants into the US so he could stretch the legal powers of the president and expand the budget for ICE. In both cases, a conflict is being manufactured to drum up fear and allow some tool to do whatever he wants. Okay. Now that we're done with that, let's move on. Let's talk about something a little less heavy, you know? Let's talk about Luthor's girlfriend. Eve Teschmacher, played by Sarah Sampaio, is a perfect Chekhov's gun in this movie. The first time we see Eve, she's taking selfies while Superman and Ultraman duke it out in the background. The audience is led to make a judgment call on her character as being vain and self-obsessed due to her taking sexy selfies while a tragedy unfolds behind her. It's also implied that she is not only comfortable with, but tacitly endorsing, her boyfriend smashing half the city. The audience is then forced to reevaluate how they view Eve when they learn that not only is Eve passing information along to Jimmy Olsen, she's trapped in an abusive relationship with Luthor. She also really wants to mess around with Jim, but that's a whole other thing. When she calls Jimmy to tell him she has evidence, and she sends him what looks like a bunch of sexy selfies, we make another judgment call. Jimmy actually makes the same judgment as the audience. He initially dismisses the selfies as Eve just being vain, but Lois correctly identifies the information hidden in the background of the pictures. Eve's character does a lot to subvert audience expectations, but it also gives us a great look into the soul of Lex Luthor. It shows that Lex obviously doesn't care about his girlfriend, and that he mostly keeps her around as arm candy. He sees her as an object, an accessory. If he saw her as a person, he would be paying more attention to her taking selfies in front of his plans to take over half of Jarhanpur. What a fucking idiot. Luthor thinks himself smarter than everybody in the room, and Eve is no exception to that. He sees people as property and employees. He sees Superman as an it, and treats his girlfriend like an object. He puts the entire city of Metropolis at risk to accomplish his own goals. When he says to Superman, brain beats brawn, he doesn't say it to make a point about playing your cards right. He genuinely believes he is mentally superior to Superman, and there is one other character who is the perfect demonstration of this: Ultraman. Ultraman was created by Luthor for the express purpose of killing Superman. He was created as a tool to do a job. Ultraman does not think or speak for himself. He only does what Luthor tells him to. Superman's defeat of Ultraman is symbolic of two things. The first is the debunking of Luthor's brain beats brawn line of thought. Superman defeats Ultraman by destroying the drones Luthor uses to control him with the help of Krypto. Luthor was apparently so incredibly unable to predict this that he has no way of countering this incredibly simple strategy. Superman proves to Luthor that he is not the it Luthor thinks he is, and he is more than capable of outwitting him. The second has to do with Ultraman's costume. When you look at Ultraman's costume in this movie, it looks nothing like his comic book counterpart. For those unaware, this is what Ultraman, the Superman of Earth 3, looks like. Movie Ultraman's suit is completely black and calls more to characters like Black Noir. This suit isn't so much a take on the idea of an evil Superman, as much as it is a take on the edgy all-black type of superhero. David Cornsweet's Superman is the ontological opposite of this type of superhero. So when Superman shoves Ultraman in a black hole, it's a complete rejection of the concept of the ultra-edgy superhero that plagued the previous DCEU. I characterized Superman at the beginning of the video as someone who gives every fuck. I would go so far as to extend that to the people who made this movie. This movie made me a fan of Superman. I used to be one of those people who thought Superman was kinda meh, but this movie made me a fan. I've seen it in theaters 4 times at time of writing, and after the 3rd time I went and bought a copy of All-Star Superman. Why? Because every part of this movie is dripping with care and attention. It's the little things like creating a whole language for Kryptonian instead of it just being English. It's making Metamorpho into a practical effect instead of CGing him. It's the small cameos from people like Maxwell Lord and Peacemaker. Okay, actually, the Peacemaker cameo is something I find really goddamn funny. I mentioned earlier how the Boravian-Jar-Empire conflict is probably based on the Ukrainian War, and when I saw Peacemaker in this movie, I immediately thought of that fuck-ass tweet John Cena made at the start of the Ukrainian War. Like, of all the things you could have tweeted to show your support, you chose to say this? And can you imagine how Peacemaker being there would have gone?
Alright, man. The Russians are just over this ridge. Air support's about 15 minutes out.
Now I just want everybody to stay cool, stay calm. Peacemaker to the rescue! What the fuck? Ah! My point is that this movie has not only reignited my love for superhero movies, but it's made me a Superman fan. This movie showed me that Superman isn't just a Boy Scout and he isn't boring. He is appealing because he is someone who is at his core a good person. Having rewatched Man of Steel somewhat recently, I can say there is a lot Snyder got wrong about Superman, but there is one scene that absolutely gets Superman right.
Not if you give them hope. That's what this symbol means. The symbol of the House of El means hope.
Superman is a god amongst men who chooses to be a man. He is kindness in a world where kindness is old-fashioned. He punches Nazis and gets cats out of trees, and when he is at his strongest, he shows up for people who are at their weakest. He is something that people can look up to as inspiration to be a better person. The symbol of Superman? It means hope. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please give it a like and share it around if you enjoyed it. Also, I have a Blue Sky account for this channel now. I'll post a link in the description. Thank you so much for watching and enjoy the outtakes. Here comes the woke, do-do-do-do. Here comes the woke, do-do-do-do. The woke train is about to fire its fucking conductor. Kal-El, my son. We sent you to Earth to do crimes and fuck bitches. Get laid and get paid, my boy! Have you guys ever seen Austin Powers? Superman's defeat of Ultraman. Ultraman. Alright. We should be good now. God damn it! Not the fucking weapon drop again! Hashtag super blurst? Dear God, I should have used fucking gorillas! Something, 6 pedals, 4 directions! It's the small cameos from people like Maxwell Lord and Peacekeeper. Okay, actually, the Peacekeeper, fuck. Have I been calling him Peacekeeper this whole time? It's God. I have written as Peacekeeper twice in this section. Holy shit. God, I am fucking stupid.